on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities.
Good morning, everyone, and let's take that overlay. That's what it's called, up off the screen, so you can see Jack's lovely face as we get this going here today on the Sports Memory Show. A little quick sports updates before we get to the topics. The two individuals, Yankee fans at the World Series, who ended up grabbing Mookie Betts' glove and arm. I mean, they got a hold of him. As Jack pointed out, they will be suspended indefinitely from attending any MLB game. Deshaun Watson is having another operation on the same ACL that he had injured before. Aaron Glenn declines an interview with the Patriots. Then we'll get into a lot of this on Monday. Ben Johnson has no interest in the Jets head coaching job. And, of course, the biggest news of all, Ohio State beats Texas 28-14. They scored 14 in the fourth, unanswered by Texas, including a strip sack and a score at the end of the game. Ohio State is a tough team. It's going to be a tough matchup for Notre Dame. You got to be able to run the ball against Ohio State. Go ahead, Jack.
You can't run the ball against Ohio State. That's the problem. They're too tough against the run. And when, Texas was down 7 points late in the game, first down and goal from the 1 yard line. That's the time they could have passed because on first down, because everyone feels on the Ohio State line, they're all, tensed up against the run. But they try running right up the middle and they get stopped. They get stuffed predictably. And then they run a sweep on the next play. And with all, it's so complicated, the offenses. They learn so much. But this you never see, guys. If you're running a sweep in that situation, second down, and it's a hopeless situation, and you're running back and throw the ball away. Why doesn't he just throw the ball in the end zone? I mean, over the end zone, just throw it away. At least you'll have third down and goal from the 1 yard line, but he gets hit for 7 yard loss. And now it's third and goal from the 8 yard line, and that changes everything at that point. And then, of course, Ewers got stripped of the ball. It got returned for a touchdown. But, guys, I guess we're on the game now. I know it's a memory show, but the game
Right, that's fine.
But the thing that really killed me, 29 seconds left, and you give up a 75-yard touchdown on a screen pass. Everyone knew it was going to be a screen pass. They weren't going to take a chance and try to throw 25 yards to midfield. They were going to run a conservative play, hoping they could break a 15, 20-yard gain, and then somehow get into field goal range after that. How do you go all out on a pass rush and leave yourself open, on the screen pass to give, the receiver like the space he had?
Well, you're being a Monday quarterback, Jack, or a Monday coach. If I'm first and goal, I put my elephant backfield in there. I put my big guys in there. I expect to get the ball in the end zone. I don't care how good Ohio State is. That's what you expect to do. The sweep was a stupid call. I would have did the middle again. I don't know why you're trying to run wide. That makes no sense. But I would have definitely tried that middle again. In fact, I might have tried it 4 times. This is who wants it more. It boils down to who wants the game more. And it looked like Ohio State wanted the game more than Texas. And I want to throw Quit Ewers a little bit of credit. He played pretty well. But as you said, it's hard to run against Ohio State. Notre Dame with Love is going to have a big game. Their quarterback can run for Notre Dame. He's going to have to. If they can't run, they're losing. It's that simple.
But Texas first and goal. You mentioned Ewers, okay? Why wasn't Arch Manning in first and goal? If you're planning to run 4 plays, Arch Manning, even if he's not running the ball, they know he represents more of a threat than Ewers, and they're going to be more concerned about him. The Ohio State defense, they did it early in the game. They had a situation from midfield, okay, 4th and 1, and they put in Arch Manning to run that.
Which he almost fumbled.
He nearly fumbled, but the idea he ran for first down, and they put him in those situations because he's more mobile. Unless they were seriously thinking of passing the ball, why was Ewers in 4th and 1?
Jack,
I mean, first and goal. I'm sorry, first and goal. I mean, at the end of the game.
I mean, they could have done that, and maybe I don't know why, Jack. Maybe because they thought they may have to throw the ball. I don't know. I just know if you're in first and goal from the 1 and you can't get in the end zone, then maybe you deserve to lose. Maybe you deserve to lose that game.
And on that 3rd and 8, I got to put a spotlight on the right tackle. That right tackle just totally whiffed on the block that led to that strip sack. Yeah,
it's true. It's true. I mean, again, Ohio State to me was just a better team. I think Ohio State, I've been saying all along, should win the national championship. Notre Dame is a very opportunistic defense. If Ohio State, they'll force Ohio State making something's going to happen. They're going to get an interception. They're going to get a fumble. Again, if Notre Dame can run the ball, even if it's a little bit, even if it's enough, the defense, again, I think the Notre Dame defense will hold up somewhat to Ohio State. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. But listen, you got to be able to run the ball, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Ohio State knows they're going to try and run, so they're going to be stacking the line. And Notre Dame's quarterback is not a throwing quarterback; he's a running.
Guys, I'm not a good handicapper when it comes to college football, and I didn't have a good year in the NFL either this year. Hasn't been a good year, but I think Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think you'll be able to go to sleep at halftime knowing who the national champion is. I think Ohio State will be up 3 touchdowns by that point.
Wow.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but it's one game. Whoever's the best team that day.
Yeah, but also yesterday's game, you look at it and you say, well, Ohio State won by a couple of touchdowns. But hypothetically, had Texas scored at the end of the game, there's a good chance they would have gone for the 2-point conversion. And imagine they make the 2-point conversion. Now, Ohio State is going to have the ball back with less than 4 minutes to go in the game, having to get into field goal range. Just think of that. So that's how close the game was in reality. But we think of, Ewers getting stripped of the ball, it being returned for TD. Now we see a 2-touchdown margin at the end, and we think, Ohio State dominated. They just did this or that. But it really was a very close, nip and tuck game.
Texas couldn't run the ball. Simple. They couldn't run. Not even the goal line. They couldn't run the ball, period. I think the leading rusher had 46 yards. So,
yeah.
Good morning, Rick. Rick, glad to have you aboard. Rich Sherlock is, we love having him. He's very loyal. He watches all the shows, really. So we love having Rick aboard. So let's start the sport memories. We're going to let James go first. He's got a NFL player from the past was unbelievable. Easily could play today, and a record breaker, Hall of Famer. There you go, James. Take it away.
Yeah, gentlemen, Dick Night Train Lane, believe it or not, is one of my favorite players. And I didn't even watch a game live, of course. I wasn't even born during that time. But as I told you earlier off the air, I used to watch like sport. It's funny using the way. I used to watch a lot of Steve Sable's highlights of players, and he was one of those guys. And when I first saw him, the highlights of this guy, he just instantly became one of my favorites, man, especially as a DB. Because coming up, when I played football, in middle school, high school, I always wanted to play offense. I never wanted to play any type of defense. And believe it or not, with all the records that Night Train Lane has as a defensive player, he also wanted to play wide receiver, and he did play some wide receiver early on. And when he tried out for the Rams, he tried out as a wide receiver first, but they switched him over back to DB. But let's go back to some of his beginnings when he started in high school. Dick came from some humble beginnings, believe it or not. I was reading that he was abandoned by his parents, by his mom, and he was adopted. And he ended up being a good high school football player, but he wasn't recruited at all. And after high school, Dick, him and his mom reconciled because he was in Texas, in Prairie View. He moved to Iowa and went and played at a JUCO, junior college, Scotts Bluff College in Omaha, Nebraska. In Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. And he played both DB and wide receiver there. So he did well, but again, not enough to move up and go anywhere. So he decided to join the Army. He joined the Army, and I've always heard this. I had uncles that played sports or that were in the military, and they told me that the Army, they had boxing, they had football, they did all these things back in the day. And he played football for them, and he was at Fort Ord. I've never even heard of that fort, believe it or not. Maybe you have, Mac, back in the day, or Jack. But anyway, he played at Fort Ord, and he played football for them, and he played wide receiver the whole time. As a matter of fact, one year in 1951, he had 18 touchdowns as a receiver. And so after he was done, he moved to California. He goes there and he's working for some airline plant. And he decides to try for the LA Rams. And he not only tried out, he made the team. But this is where the origin of his name came from, the Night Train nickname, the moniker. It wasn't because of what you think, maybe because of his play on the field. Because in 1952, the song Night Train by Jimmy Forrest came out. And one of the guys, Tom Fierce, would actually play this. He would play it like, every night in the hall, and they find Dick out there dancing to the music. And so he would call him Night Train, and it stuck. So it had nothing to do with him, and what he did on the field. And he was in college and in the pros. In his early scrimmages, he was known for his viciousness as a hitter. And because I remember watching the 100 all time, Jerry Glanville was quoted as saying that Dick told him, he said, "Jerry, look, it's not a good hit in the league if you're not hitting above the eyebrow." So I'm paraphrasing that, but hitting above the eyebrow. This guy was vicious. I saw some of the highlights, and he would tear people's heads off, man. And he's the reason that some of the rule changes came. When he was hitting guys, taking the helmets off, they changed rules for that. He clotheslined guys. They made rules for that. And then he using his elbow, taking his elbow and hitting guys against the head, and they changed rules for that. But that being said, in 1952, when he made the team, he played a full 12-game season, and he got the record for 14 interceptions, which still stands to this day. And that's incredible because you got guys that can get 11, 12 interceptions in the season, and they're doing it in 16 and 17 games. Now, mind you, the rules have changed. You can't do the things that he was doing. I mean, you can only press at 5 yards, but still, for somebody who's in the game and he's got 12 games and he's got that many interceptions, that was still impressive. But and even saying that, he got all those interceptions in that first year, and he wasn't even recognized for any All-Pros or any Pro Bowl nods at all. And so he go on to play. He played another season for the Rams, and he wanted a raise. If I was making $4,500, I would want a raise too. So they offered him an additional $2,500. He didn't like that, as most players wouldn't, and so he asked to be traded. And he was traded to the Chicago Cardinals. Another fun fact that I learned, that the Cardinals didn't start in Arizona; they started in Chicago. And so he played for them for 6 seasons and got 30 interceptions. And of course he was getting All-Pro nods at this time. And he was traded again to the Detroit Lions lastly, and he played 6 seasons there as well, and 21 interceptions. And in that year, I think he was playing for he's playing for the Lions when he intercepted Johnny Unitas. That's one specific game in his first season there, and it went for 80 yards for a touchdown. So the guy had speed. He had like the will to like knock guys' heads off. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I mean, he was a tough tackler, and it led to a great career. All in all, he played 14 seasons in the league. He had 7 All-Pro first team nods, 3 second team. He's in the Arizona Ring of Honor. He's in the Pride of the Lions. He's led the league in interceptions twice. And he's got 68 total interceptions. At the time of his retirement, believe it or not, that was only second in the all time, and now it's 4th. And man, it's just a great, impressive individual on the field. He's again, of the top 100 players, he's number 30, and so that tells you what his peers thinks of him. And what other people should be thinking of him. Because I know a lot of guys my age or younger don't know who this guy is. I just happen to know because I love football and I love history of the game. And so I just happen to see who he is. But I'm not a person that can say that I've watched games live. Maybe, Jack, you might have seen him, play against some of these teams. And no shot at Jack. I'm just saying that I know I hear a lot of Jack saying that he's watched a lot of these games and stuff like that. And so, impressive football player. And he wasn't even a first ballot Hall of Famer. When he finished in 65 with the Lions, he didn't get into Hall of Fame until 1974. And so with that said, I mean, like you said, Matt, could he have played in this era? I think so, especially for a guy that played wide receiver. And he was really fast, and he showed that he had success on the other side of the ball. As a matter of fact, when he played for the Cardinals, a guy named Ogden Compton, a quarterback for them, he threw him a touchdown for 98 yards, and at the time it was the second longest. Well, not a touchdown, but a reception. He caught it for 98 yards, and so it just showed his athleticism that he had on both sides of the ball. But yeah, I think he could play in this league, or he could play in any era. I mean, it just shows he's in the top 75th, 50th anniversary, and 100.
Yes, he did. He did. Jack and him, they both took algebra together. But look, Night Train Lane, a great NFL player. Of course, the question is always, could the older players, Jimmy Browns, and of course he could, and some of the quarterbacks play today? And with the rule changes, I think a lot of them could. The question I always come back with is, could the new players, the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, play back then when the rules were a lot lax, right? I mean, I don't know if you ever saw the picture of Y.A. Tittle after he played the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he was sacked like 8 or 10 times, something ridiculous. And he was on his knees at the end of the game. Looked like he was in a war. Looked, they just beat the hell out of him. And that's the way they played back then. So never mind getting hit in with the helmet in the chin or your knee. I mean, they went out to almost hurt you. They knew if they got a quarterback knocked out of the game or a running back, their chances were better to win, and that's the way they played back then. So that's why when somebody asked me, well, could Jimmy Brown play today? Well, could one of these running backs, could Milton play back then? Could Mixon play back then? I don't know.
They
probably could.
The great players today would have been great back.
I think they could have been.
Derrick Henry would have been great.
I think they could have been, Jack, but I'm just talking about the physicality back then. A lot different than today. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, the quarterback position, I mean, keep this in mind, the Brady's, the Mannings, they didn't have the rules in place that you have today to protect them. So they got beat up a bit too. Let's not forget that. But yeah, I agree. They would have, the blindside hits of the past, they would, and then the players allowed to pile on the quarterback to try to knock him out of the game. So if you had to drop today's quarterbacks into, the past, they might have, they'd have certain success, obviously, with the athleticism, but like a Lamar Jackson who would run and pick up like 25 yards and then hit the deck. And then the guy would do a forward roll on his back a moment later, and the whistle wouldn't be called. He would be like stunned, and figuring, I don't want to play in this era. Get me back to where I am. That's a distinct possibility. The skill positions like wide receiver, the receivers of the past couldn't do what the guys did today. The acrobatic catches, keeping your feet in bounds. You saw none of that in the past. None of that. So I don't want to hear that the receivers matched up. Could they have adjusted? Perhaps. I mean, Rice.
Steve Largent was like that.
Steve Largent to a degree. Was Jerry Rice really like that? Rice, yeah.
Lynn Swann.
And Lynn Swann, yes, I would agree with that. Jerry Rice was the epitome of what really started. But I was going to say Jerry Rice, but you're right, Mac. Lynn Swann, I watched a lot of his highlights. He was like a ballerina.
Took ballet. Yeah. Let me tell you, the only thing I want to say about the wide receivers, you saw what happened to those wide receivers going over the middle. There's no defenseless wide receiver back then. I mean, you're going to get cracked, and they knew they were going to get cracked. So, I mean, all I say, Jack, I'm not saying that they couldn't have played back then, but man, would they had to adjust because, you saw Joe Namath getting his helmet ripped off. I mean, that's the way they played. It was very, very tough back then. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Tom Brady couldn't play because he's a big guy, but you're going to hit him in the knee. He's going to complain about it? No, that's the way it is.
He would have just been the best quarterback in the NFL at that point. I don't want to hear.
I would agree with that.
Mac, you mentioned running backs, whether or not they can play back then. I would say a player like Adrian Peterson would be in his era. In Adrian Peterson's era, would be like the Jim Brown of his era. I think
the running backs would have an easier time, right? Because the running backs, you get hit in a running back all the time in the NFL anyway. It's the wide receivers, it's the quarterbacks. The defensive backs would have loved playing back then. I'll tell you, they would have loved, the linebackers would have loved playing back then. But anyway, Night Train Lane, one of the greatest of all time. Defensive backs, no question about it. Jack is going to do something of a person a team he did watch, in fact, lifelong fan of. But there's a lot of questions about this first Super Bowl between the AFL and NFL that I'm going to hit him with. And I've done it before, so he probably knows what's coming. But Jack, why don't you talk a little bit about the real?
Yeah, I'm old enough that I've watched every Super Bowl. When I was a kid, I remember Super